It's easy to name mysteries unsolvable after a considerable amount of time has passed with no information. But with new expertise and processes, many long unresolved mysteries are finally getting answers. Number 5. For reasons that remain unknown, Blanca Mabel Otero left her home in November of 1995 and vanished. She'd always been very close to her family, particularly her parents, but something changed that winter. Ever since she'd moved out of the family home, Blanca had visited her parents every weekend, but that wasn't the case on November 30th, 1995. Her family were unable to get a hold of her, and when they went to the apartment she shared with another young woman, they discovered she'd asked for her wages from work and left. At first, they weren't too worried. Blanca was in her 40s at the time and of sound mind. If she wanted to leave, that was her choice. Not too long after she vanished, there were sightings of Blanca in a nearby town. By the time her family had traveled there to search for her, she'd already left. After 2 years and no sign of her, her family filed a missing persons report. It actually didn't take police long to locate her, but she told them she didn't want to be found. From then on, there was silence for the next 2 decades. Police expected Blanca to renew her driver's license, but it didn't happen. At this point, Blanca's family began to fear the worst, and in 2002, that fear appeared to have become reality. A digital artist created a sketch of a woman whose body had been found on a beach. The sketch bore a striking resemblance to Blanca, and when her brother saw it, he instantly contacted police. DNA tests were carried out, but it didn't give the family any answers. The body didn't belong to Blanca. In 2005, Blanca's father became seriously ill. The family hoped if she was alive, Blanca would come home to see him. She didn't, but did send a letter asking her father for forgiveness. He passed away the following year. From that point onwards, the trail went cold. That was until 2020. Ava was an elderly woman in her mid-60s. She lived alone and had difficulty walking. When her neighbors hadn't seen her for a few days, they contacted police to conduct a welfare check. Police found her on the floor of her living room, severely dehydrated. They tried to contact her next of kin to look after her, only to find no records of Ava. They had to coax it out of her, but Ava eventually confessed her real name was Blanca. She's since been reunited with her family. The reason for her disappearance remains unknown. Number 4. The Martyrs of Otranto were some 800 men who lost their lives during a siege on the Italian town by an army of the Ottoman Empire in 1480. At first, the army tried to convince the citizens to surrender peacefully, but the defenders believed they would have reinforcements soon and they resisted. Within weeks, the defenders had to surrender to the sieging army, and the city was sacked. Women and children were taken as prisoners and sold into slavery. Men and those who were too young to be sold had their lives taken. Just over 800 men survived by hiding in the crypt of the Cathedral of Otranto. Of course, it didn't take too long for the invaders to find them, and they were taken onto a hill and killed. According to the Catholic Church, these men had all been told to convert to Islam or lose their life. Modern scholars disagree and don't believe that there was ever an option, but the belief led the church to name the men martyrs. In 2013, the men were all proclaimed saints and are collectively the patron saints of the city of Otranto. Their skulls are now displayed in the same cathedral the men had once taken shelter in. Almost all of them are displayed so they face any visitors that come into the cathedral. It's a chilling sight, but creepier still was that one skull was not facing the same direction. One skull, kept behind a layer of glass, faces away from the entrance and up to the ceiling, displaying the back of the skull to visitors. The skull features 16 perfectly symmetrical holes, leading to it to be nicknamed the honeycomb skull. The case of these holes remained a mystery, although it was clearly believed the skull must have belonged to someone special given its positioning. Experts in 2015 finally came up with an answer. This wasn't due to something divine or medical. The holes had been made by a drill, likely to obtain the bone powder to treat diseases. It was believed in the 17th and 18th centuries that powder from martyrs who died in traumatic circumstances could be used to heal many diseases. Experts now believe this process had taken place shortly before the bones were rearranged into their current positions in 1711, rather than closer to the time of the man's death. Number 3. Late last year, news broke that many true crime fans had been waiting for 50 years. The Zodiac Killer's second cipher has been cracked. The Zodiac Killer is one of the most infamous serial killers in America, responsible for taking the lives of 5 people and attempting to take the lives of at least 2 others. While there have been numerous theories about his identity, the case has never been solved and remains under investigation by the FBI. During his crime spree, the killer sent a series of letters to local newspapers. Included in the letters were details about his crimes that had not been made public, proving his authenticity. He also included codes which he promised, once cracked, would reveal his identity. The first 3 letters fit together to form one letter, known as the 408 cipher. It only took a week for this code to be cracked by a school teacher and his wife. In it, he claimed the people he took the lives of would be his slaves after he died, and that he wouldn't reveal his name because he would be stopped. After the letter was decoded, the criminals sent a number of other letters and notes, including one on the car door of one of his victims. But by far, the most intriguing was the 340 cipher. Named after the number of characters in the code, the 340 cipher was sent to the San Francisco Chronicle in November of 1969. It came after a TV talk show featured a phone call from someone claiming to be the killer. The person on the phone told the host he was sick and needed help, and that he didn't want to go to the gas chamber. Despite its length, amateur and professional codebreakers alike had been unable to crack the code. That was until late 2020, when an international team announced they'd solved the puzzle. It was a complicated process of rearranging the cipher, running through programs, and being able to pull out keywords. It was made even harder due to the mistakes made by the Zodiac, which jumbled the cipher up even more. Unfortunately, the letter didn't reveal any clues to the Zodiac's identity, but it did confirm that the person who called the TV show wasn't legitimate. He said he wasn't afraid of death and now had enough slaves for paradise. A few days after the code was cracked, the FBI confirmed the solution was legitimate. It may not have been the answer some of us were hoping for, but it's one more piece of the puzzle solved. Number 2. The story of Gustav Klimt's The Portrait of a Lady has as many twists as a Hollywood heist movie, but the painting itself was found just yards away from where it had been stolen some 23 years prior. The oil-on-canvas painting was created in 1917 by the Austrian artist, and it was one of his final pieces of work. It was purchased in 1925 and hung in the gallery that bore his name until it was stolen in 1997. The Portrait of a Lady had recently received a new burst in popularity after an art student noticed the striking resemblance that it bore to one of Klimt's paintings, which had itself gone missing in 1917. He proposed that it had been painted over the top of the older painting. X-ray testing proved the theory, and a special expedition was planned to show off the piece. As the museum prepared for the exhibition, renovation work was taking place. A number of paintings were packed away and moved into storage. A number of gallery staff noticed the lady was missing, but assumed it had been removed deliberately in preparation for the exhibition. When gallery staff realized they'd lost the painting, the police were involved, but they soon ran out of leads. They tried consulting a known art thief for advice, but this also turned up nothing. Over the years, police found numerous copies of the lady, but there was no sign of the original. In 2016, the thief who had originally given police advice did an interview with a local journalist. In it, he revealed that he had not only stolen the lady, but he had done it twice. With the help of someone working at the gallery, he'd stolen the original painting sometime after it had been x-rayed and replaced it with a copy. When the painting suddenly gained a lot of attention, he'd realized Klimt experts would be coming to the exhibition and the fake would be discovered. This would lead to the person who had helped him being found out. The original painting had already been sold, so he simply stole the fake. However, he did claim the original painting would turn up soon, near the 20th anniversary of the theft. The anniversary came and went with no such thing ever happening. It wasn't until 2019 that the painting was discovered. While cutting away ivy on an exterior wall of the gallery, gardeners found a metal panel. Beneath the panel was a small hole in the wall containing a black plastic bag. The lady was found inside. X-rays proved it was the original, and within months of being found, the thieves wrote a letter confessing to the crime. The original art thief was actually one of 2 people involved in the crime, and he had allegedly made true to his promise that the painting would be returned on the 20th anniversary of the theft. That was when it was placed in the hole in the wall. Police believe the story, but the men won't be punished for the crime due to the statute of limitations. Number 1. Be warned, the pronunciations in this story are likely going to be butchered, but I'll do my best. Last year, Finnish authorities announced that they'd cracked a 33-year-old murder mystery. Police believe they've identified the person responsible for taking the life of a German student aboard a cruise ship in 1987, and can prove it. Klaus Schelke was traveling with his girlfriend, Bettina, and his childhood friend Thomas from their home in West Germany through the Nordic countries. They opted to take a one-night trip aboard the cruise ship, the Viking Slay. They were just a few of many travelers who instead took sleeping bags and settled down to sleep wherever they could. Once on board, Thomas split from his friends, presumably so he didn't have to be a third wheel. Klaus and Bettina went up to the helicopter platform, which was actually quite busy in the early evening. Among those the couple met on the platform were a trio of young people. From Kangasala, an English engineering student who was happy to share alcohol with them, and a group of Danish scouts who were around their age. As the night wore on, it got colder and the group dispersed to find somewhere to sleep indoors. At around 1 a.m., Klaus and Bettina decided to call it a night, only to realize they'd left their sleeping bags with Thomas. They woke Thomas and retrieved their bags, then went back to the helicopter deck. The couple settled behind a piece of plexiglass that gave them some shielding from the wind. About 2.5 hours later, 3 of the Danish scouts returned to the deck. It was about that time that the bars on the ship closed, and many of the passengers aboard the ship noted that the scouts were causing disturbances. At first, the 3 scouts who went to the helicopter deck thought it was empty. They then spotted 2 people struggling to stand at the far end. Thinking they were drunk, the scouts went to help, only to find Klaus and Bettina had both been badly beaten. They immediately alerted crew members, and the helicopter flew Klaus and Bettina to the mainland for treatment. They both suffered blunt force trauma to the head, though one of the people who found them also claimed Bettina was missing a finger. Klaus was pronounced dead at 5:48 a.m. Bettina suffered serious injuries but managed to recover. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to remember what had happened. A police investigation began before the ship even arrived in Finland, and police tried to do checks on everyone leaving, but congestion meant they were forced to allow many people to simply pass through. Thomas and the people Klaus and Bettina had spent the evening with were all interrogated. The engineer who shared alcohol with them was found with blood on his shirt, though he claimed he had a nosebleed during the night, and tests determined that it was his own blood. New information was obtained in 2016. It's not known what that information was, but it pointed the police in the direction of one of the scouts, who'd only been 18 years old at the time of the attack. The Danish man, who gave several interviews at the time, denies that he was behind the crime, though police are certain that they have evidence to prove otherwise. His trial is set for May of this year. It's not known if police believe he was acting alone or if anyone else is still being investigated. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to click that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But I've been Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.